So Claire, today we're going to talk about watches and their valuations, but what's happening in the watch market?
Well, the watch market is incredibly buoyant, it's incredibly fast-paced, and I think that a lot of watch owners, rather than collectors, will have watches that they do not realise have increased in value quite so dramatically.
And why are you differentiating between collectors and owners?
The watch market has a collector's sort of area to it, undoubtedly, partly because watches are not subject to capital gains tax, so for many people it's an attractive alternative investment. It's people that perhaps have bought a watch recently, perhaps inherited it or been given it as a gift, that are wearing it and enjoying it, that will not realise what it's currently worth.
Well, that's interesting because we actually find from an insurance perspective that clients who may have acquired a watch within the last 3 or more years are often underinsured when it comes to making a claim, and so are disappointed when the claim amount that comes through is not sufficient to cover the cost to repair or replace the watch.
So on that basis, what's the sort of recommended time frame from the insurers and brokers for people to have their valuations updated?
It's usually between every 3 to 5 years to keep on top of market trends. There is a sort of common misconception actually that the insurance companies will make sure that people's watches or valuables are insured for the right amount, but actually the responsibility absolutely lies with the policyholder.
Okay. And one of the things that I think is really interesting for people to have a look at would be the auction market. And we've seen some incredible watches go through auction. For instance, recently, Paul Newman's Daytona, Rolex Daytona, made $17.75 million at auction. It has increased the interest in other Rolex Daytonas and also other Rolex sports models. So we start to see models that are difficult to get hold of really gaining traction in that secondary market.
The secondary market, therefore, that you've just touched on and talked about, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, the secondary market's an interesting area. It consists of the auction houses, but also dealers who sometimes can offer the opportunity for clients to be able to replace a particular watch model that isn't easily accessible through an authorised retailer. This is a great case in point here. Rolex Submariner with a black dial, very, very desirable wristwatch. And in this instance, if the owner of this watch lost it and was able to replace it through a retailer, they would expect to pay £6,550 for it. However, supply and demand are two very, very different things. It's virtually impossible to replace as new, and so in this instance it would not be unreasonable for the owner to have to go into the secondary market, which, as I say, may be the only place that you actually can do that. You're going to be looking in the region of £8,500 to £10,500.
Wow, that's quite a big difference. So we've talked about some new watches. What's happening with the vintage watch market?
Well, people, I think, assume that because their watch has got some damage and perhaps the dial has faded, that the value has gone, but that's not always the case, and in fact in some instances it can lead to an increased value to that particular piece. So for example, if the dial has faded from black to a sort of what they call a tropical brown, that will be increasing the value of that piece in a marketplace. And also if it's, for example, a diver's watch that's got the original log with it and it's showing wear and tear around that, it increases the collectability.
Well, so really generally what we're saying is that whether your watch is new or whether it's that slightly bashed around older watch, to get it reappraised, revalued is really important to make sure that when it comes to making a claim, you're not disappointed and you get the correct amount to repair or replace it. And coming to you, Claire, for those sort of valuation services is appropriate for our clients to do.
Yes, and I think it's really important that we look at all areas of the market for them to make sure that they have the correct information and then can deal with a broker like Bruce Stevenson, who understands the nuances of the watch market and doesn't just insist on retail replacement when that's entirely inappropriate.
Yeah.